Alright, so let's imagine a magical energy source. This is a powerful energy available to all, and it grants amazing abilities, powers that have never been seen before. The users who are granted this power have to use what they're given. Some have more stronger abilities than others, but those who will rise to the top are not the ones who have the strongest powers. It'll be those who are the most creative with their abilities and are the ones who will rise above the strongest of this world. How will you use your power to achieve greatness? And that brings me to the topic of today's video on traditional versus digital manga materials. What do you need? But before we get into this video, I'm gonna need you guys to check out my manga Note, the one shot that I entered in the Shonen Jump Tezuka contest. If you love the cover, you'll love the story. Also, if you're new, don't hesitate to hit that subscribe button, click that like button, and ring that bell for notifications when you want to hear things that I have to say. Now let's get into it. Hey there everyone, it's your boy Vandal, and I'm coming back to you with another in-depth manga making guide talking about what manga materials you'll need to start your manga, which ones you should use to advance your manga creation process, and I need you guys to watch through to the end to hear which one you should actually pick. So as you can see here, we have two types of manga creation tools. We have our traditional manga materials, and we also have our powerful digital ones. I'm gonna break down what are the pros and cons, so let's begin with traditional. So traditional materials are great, usually the easiest option for us to start with because we all have them at our disposal. At a glance, I know that it can be intimidating to see so many tools, but once we break it down, it'll be simple to understand. So our first tool that we're gonna take a look at is the pencil. This can be, for starters, your regular number 2 pencil, which is great and already has an eraser, very simple, something that we all should have at home laying around somewhere. If you're looking for options in pencil lead to get lighter or darker lines, we can look at these pencils here. What you'll notice about these pencils is that you may have seen some of these at your local art store. Some of these pencils tend to have numbers and letters attached to them. The letter next to the number is to let us know how hard or soft the pencil is. The number is to denote the level. So for example, if you have a pencil that says 6H, your pencil lead is harder than say 3H, which means your pencil strokes will be a lot on the lighter side. On the other side of this pencil spectrum, if it's 2B for example, it'll be a lot softer than, let's say, a 3H, and that means your pencil strokes will be a lot darker. So long story short, H is for hard and B is for soft. The numbers control how hard or soft your pencil lead is. Next up are the mechanical pencils. They are nice for a multitude of reasons. They are pretty much like your number 2 pencil, but these are nice because you have the ability to refill them with various types of lead. So if you find a particular casing that you like, you can change out the lead and keep your cool pencil case that you just got. Even cooler is what we talked about earlier. Using the pencil lead types in your mechanical pencil, you can change out the lead with the lead refills if you're someone who likes your lead to be a little bit softer or harder for your preference. You can also have different sized leads, but the nice part is the consistency of the line that is created using the mechanical pencil. Overall, this is a nice fusion of both worlds between the mechanical pencil and your regular number 2 pencil. Lastly, I want to talk about the non-photo blue pencil. No, this isn't a color pencil. This is an excellent tool for the hardcore traditional artist. This pencil is great because when you scan it in, the blue lines are not picked up by the scanner. I know, crazy, right? So once we get to the inking stage, all of the pencil lines that we made are gonna vanish without a care in the world, and it's gonna be amazing. This is excellent for those who don't want to deal with all that erasing that comes after you're done the inking phase over your penciling. Which brings me to the perfect segue into erasers. This will be quick, but it's very important. So erasers, there are 2 types of erasers that I like to use. There are the plastic ones, we're going to talk about first. They're great, cheap, accessible. However, the only annoying part is with all the shavings that they can leave around. If that's not really a problem for you, then you have nothing to worry about with using these. You'll be just fine. The nice part about these as well is that they even come in a little pencil holder, which allows you to have refills. So if you run out, you can get a new one, and they're very good for using for nice fine details. Then the last one that I think is really nice is the kneaded eraser, which is great for erasing because it leaves no shavings. It's mainly used for for figure drawing, but I think it's a helpful tool nonetheless. Okay, we've covered everything for our pencil needs. We need to go into paper. This is a whole mixed bag, but let's jump right in. Before we get into this section, I'm going to talk a lot about paper weight. The weight of a paper is important for many reasons, but to simplify it, it's just for durability. And what does this mean? This means how much can I erase on this paper? How much ink can it actually hold? How will it deal with my colors? This is all very important when trying to factor in what you're going to consider when choosing what paper to use. So let's start off with our most basic paper, printer paper. If you have nothing else on this list, this is your friend because it's cheap and plentiful. However, the quality is not our friend because with this, the paper tends to be very, very thin because it's only made for printing documents, not generally designed for artwork. Now we can step our paper game up to sketchbook paper. And I know a lot of y'all will say, oh, sketchbook paper is not that great. But if that's the only thing you have access to, I think it can be a way better weighted paper than printing paper. At least it's designed for art. I would even say that you can make manga in there. However, I would be wary about what kind of sketchbook that you use. There are your binded spine sketchbooks versus your spiral spine sketchbooks, and each of them has their pros and cons. The reason I like the spiral spines for making manga is because they're a lot easier to take out the pages once you're ready to scan them. However, when you do this with a binded sketchbook, it sucks because eventually you'll start to ruin your sketchbook and all the pages will just fly out. So it's not very fun for using it to make manga. What I do like using it for though is I like using a binded sketchbook to flesh out characters, ideas for the manga. I don't see why it couldn't be used for both, but if you want to keep the integrity of your book, I wouldn't use it for manga. Okay, so I want to take a little side note here to say that there are so many different papers that you can choose from. This video is too long to go into all of the paper types. What I want to say is you should try and find the paper that you like at the price range that is good for you and also gives you the best quality. The paper that I find that fits this description for myself and many other manga pros is the Leader brand manga paper. It has excellent weight and it's the perfect size for all your manga needs. I sound like the perfect commercial, I know, right? The Leader manga paper is great because remember that non-photo blue pencil that we talked about earlier? Well, this paper has a little bit of that going on. Having that non-photo blue ruler lines is helpful to gauge the size of your panels that you want to create and keep your ruler straight while doing so. It's also great because those blue lines are gone when it comes time for you to scan your finished manga, which is a great added bonus and less of a hassle for you to do in post-production. It can be a little bit pricey because it's being imported from Japan, but I think it's well worth the investment once you're ready to start your manga making career. With that completed, inking your manga is the part of your manga materials that's really gonna let your artwork pop. It makes your artwork stand out and shows what you want the reader to really pay attention to, and heck, it just looks good. For these tools, let's start with your liners. Liners are great, I love them. You have your Sakura Micron, you have your Prismacolor, you even have your Copic. These are great because they come in varying width sizes, so you can find what works for you, but you have many options to choose from, so take your time. I think the brand that you choose is solely based on your budget. I think they are generally the same in quality across the board. However, these versions of Copic liners that I have here are a tad bit more expensive than your average liner because they allow for refills, which are great for the longevity of these markers, but not so great for your wallet. This is great because normally we use our ink liners till they're finished and you have to get a new set of liners or a new liner because eventually you're gonna run out of ink. That's just how the liner game works. But as convenient as these liners are, I don't think they're as great as what I have next up for you guys. So this is a fountain pen. This is what I think is the best tool for inking a manga, period. So the fountain pen is what they used before pens were a thing, but it's great for manga because the ink that you use is etched into the paper. Think higher tiered cave people. But that's why in the paper section I stressed so much about paperweight, because using the fountain pen on a piece of printing paper would destroy the paper pretty easily. This is because the paper is too thin to handle the ink that it would be taking and also the sharp edge of your fountain pen. Now, when it comes to nibs on your fountain pen, there are many that you can choose from as they all give different pen strokes. However, the choice of many manga pros is the G Pen. Many say that it's hard to use because they have not had a lot of practice with it, but I think that this is something that can be worked over with time and practice. It's an excellent tool for making manga. I also love it over the pre-filled liner pens simply because of the fact that when I erase the line work of my art and I'm done with the G Pen, the black that I put down is still black, which is something that I notice happens with the pre-filled liners. They tend to have like this off gray effect when you erase them, but it doesn't happen with the G Pen at all, and I love that it stays black. It looks like it's almost printed on the paper. As for what ink you should use, I think any good quality ink is great. I have Deleter brand as well as any other ink that you can find at your local art store. It's fine, whatever it is, honestly, as long as you're comfortable using it and it gives you good quality ink strokes. Okay, so now we've covered all our bases for our traditional manga tools, but there are a few things left, and one of the things that you still might need in your toolkit is manga screen tone. Now, I'm not going to go into too much depth into this topic, but what I will say is that I think physical toning is something that's a bit old school and antiquated, and it's a bit tedious and can be a bit more expensive than it's worth. That said, you can buy tones, but it's not really necessarily, as you can use computer software to do actually everything that you would want to do physically. If you're interested in a little tutorial on how to actually use these physical screen tones, drop a comment down below telling me that you'd like to see it, and I'll gladly make you one. Even though our manga we're creating might be black and white, color is not something to skimp out on. I love this part, and there are so many avenues that you can go with. You can use coloring pencils, you can use pastel pencils, you can use marker, you could even use watercolor. There's so many things that you can do with color that limiting it to just what I'm about to tell you is a travesty. So experiment, go wild, y'all. But I believe what you generally should use for your manga making processes is markers. I love Copics. They are an amazing brand. However, they can be super expensive as a beginning artist. I can totally understand that. There are many brands out there that are similar to Copics, so I would go with those and research what they are. Usually they'll have like a same form factor as the Copic, like a brush tip with a chiseled end. You'll know them when you see them, trust me. So I like using the Copic markers with well-weighted paper because the Deleter brand paper can really hold a lot of the colored ink very well, especially for like really detailed drawings when you're coloring them. That said, I chose Copics for the color quality that I get from them. Again, these are not cheap. To start off your collection, I would say start growing it one at a time. The other nice part about these is that you have two versions that you can choose from. There's the sketch version and there's also the chow version. The difference is that the chow version holds a little bit less ink than the sketch, which allows it to be a little bit more cheaper. If you buy them one at a time, like I just said, your collection will grow before you know it. Another nice aspect to them is that you can refill them. I know. Refilling is the best tool for a traditional artist because all of your things are finite. And this is great for Copics because you'll only end up buying the marker once, and if you take really good care of it, all you have to do is just pay for the refills and make sure that you just take care of your marker. It's very simple. This is all going to take time to figure out what color tool you want to use, but all of that's going to be dependent on your budget and the style of manga that you want to create. Now, this section is getting towards the end, but here are some afterthought items that I think all traditional artists need. One is a scanner that fits the size of paper that you plan to use for your manga. If you're using 8.5 by 11 paper, you're pretty much fine with most scanners, or whatever the standard is in the country that you're working from. But if you're using Deleter brand paper that I mentioned earlier, or anything similar or even bigger, you don't have a lot of options here. Generally, there's the Mustech scanner that you can have at home, but that is also very expensive. Or any other scanner that could fit bigger paper, let's say 11 by 17 or maybe even something bigger. But if a scanner of that size is not in your budget, what you can do, if that isn't possible now, is go to your Staples or office supply store to scan your works from there. It'll cost a little something, but over time and with a little bit of saving, you'll be able to get that scanner that fits the size paper that you're working on. A little note here, please make sure that you scan your work. It adds to how professional it will read once you are working to clean it up. No pictures, please. Save those progress pics for Instagram. By the way, follow me on there. Thanks. Now this territory for this next item that I'm going to mention for the traditional artists kind of crosses that line into digital a little bit. But after you scan your work, you're going to need some sort of photo editor, whether it's Photoshop or Clipstudio. Honestly, it's up to you. This is to help with any corrections that you need to make to your artwork, or the addition of any lettering or sound effects that you may want to add to your manga to give that extra polish before you show the rest of the world. Okay, wow, I think we're actually done with the whole traditional section and all the tools that you'll need for your manga making process. Let me know if there were any tools that I missed in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about that. Some of the pros that I think would stand for traditional manga making are that you can start easily by getting into this with a pencil and paper, and as your skills progress and your budget increases, you can gain access to more options to add to your arsenal of art tools, which I think is great, because you should always be working on building up your skill set and your knowledge with the tools that you're using. However, I want to make this point clear. These tools are just that, tools. Just because I say one tool is better than the other does not mean it'll make you a better artist or a storyteller. If you invest in your tools for your craft, that is a great thing that you're doing for your future. However, if you're not investing into yourself and putting time to improve your art, then it's just a waste of money. That said, the cons to having traditional art materials, I think, is that there are a lot of them and they can get pretty expensive as you get up the quality ranks. Also, they're relatively finite and they run out, and they take up space over time as you accumulate them and wonder, what are you doing with all of these art supplies in the first place? Now for straight digital art. Now I want to take a moment here to say that digital art will not make your art any better. If you aren't where you want to be right now, digital art will not magically make you any better. I'll go more into this in my conclusion, but just remember that the tools don't make you any better. So digital is a mixed bag. You have a few routes you can go, but the most important part about digital is what you actually need to start, and that's a computer. This computer needs to be just strong enough to run any digital program of your choosing. For example, Photoshop, Clipstudio, etc. Base specs on most computers shouldn't have an issue running many of these programs. However, I would look at each program's minimum requirements to make sure your computer can run that software. Speaking of software, what software should you use? There are many to pick from, like I just said earlier, but let's go a little bit more in depth on what that means. So if you aren't in a big budget, where you can start is at the bottom, and you can use GIMP. A lot of people use GIMP. It's free. It works on PC and Mac. Another free option that you have is Medibang Pro, which is free, and the only caveat here is that it has ads. It's supported also on many devices, so like Android, iPad, PC, Mac, all that good stuff, so it's a real good plus if you want to work on different mediums. There are a few other apps, like I said, Photoshop, but Clipstudio is one that you'll have to pay for, sadly, as well as Photoshop. But as far as manga apps go, I want to say Clipstudio is the #1 all-inclusive manga making app. If you guys are interested in having more of an in-depth tutorial on how that app works and how to use it, leave a comment down below so I know that you're interested. I have a lot of experience in using the app, and I would love to teach anyone who would like to know more about it. Okay, so now the big question in the room is, once you have your computer, you have your program of choice, how are you actually going to make the art digitally? This section is the main part of the digital art segment. So let's go with your free option. So normally when you purchase a laptop or a desktop computer, you're given a mouse along with that. I know, just keep going along with me here. That would be where you would want to start if you could get nothing else on the list that I'm about to talk about. There are also people who say that they swear by this method and it works for them. However, I am not the person who would recommend this. But if you have nothing else and you are a die-hard wanna do digital art person, go for it. But you will have a hard time getting your desired results for getting your art the way you want it to look. That's all I'm gonna say about that one. Now we are at the part where everyone has to make a decision, and that's tablets. There are many to choose from, so I'll go into the types and the pros and cons of each of them. So let's start with the cheapest of tablets, and that's the drawing tablet without the screen. This is a plug-in option, and you have a stylus that you can draw on a pressure-sensitive pad with. You can get one on Amazon for about $40, and then they scale up from there. The pros of this is that it's not too expensive to get. The only major downside that I would say of this is that the experience is a bit disjointed from how you normally draw. Since you aren't drawing on a screen, there's some time before it'll feel a little bit natural, but overall it's a nice cheap way to start getting in the digital tablet game. Now we're getting into the huge market, and that's drawing tablets with a screen. There are many brands, and a lot of people can get intimidated from the price being too expensive for their budget. However, the budget screen tablets are starting with Gaomon to Huion to XP Pen. I probably butchered that, but that's how it progresses in price. I think as you progress through those brands, the difference becomes a form factor. So like how the pen feels, meaning like the lag as you drag it from one part of the screen to another, and the colors, and just the overall form factor and how that works and the size of it, all factors into that price of the budget ones. But honestly, I feel that the breakdown is a bit minimal between each of these brands and price ranges, and that's the only thing you're really going to be focusing on here, is not those minor differences on the color, feel, and such, but more so how does that fit into your budget. Since none of these options are all in one, you're going to need a computer, since these are just tablets with huge screens that you're going to be drawing on. However, they're great to get a feeling of being close to that paper feeling, even though you never get anything that is. But it's also amazing screen real estate to work with, and if you can get one, by all means. The last of the drawing tablets, and this is by far the best, and in my personal recommendation of mine, the iPad Pro. Now, these are all tablets we're going to talk about here, but specifically the iPad Pro right here is the best experience I've ever had with drawing. The pen is super responsive, and the experience is one for one with actual drawing with any other mediums. Pencil, paper, paint, you name it, it is amazing. I did say that there will be other tablets, but I have little experience with those, and the best I think so far is the iPad Pro. There are other tablets like the Surface Pro or the Samsung tablet that use styluses, which are viable options. However, I need to research a little bit more to make sure that you can run your desired programs on it. I think tablets, especially the iPad, are amazing in the function and the portability and how much space they save. The downsides, I would say, are the price, which it can be a bit pricey, but it has a multitude of uses outside of art, so it can be a great investment if you want to use it as a multimedia device. So weigh your options there. I think another downside is actually the size. I wish it was a bit bigger, the iPad especially, to have more working room, but everything said, it works much more better than a lot of the tablets I just mentioned and has more intuitive controls. I would say that digital was a pretty short section, so if there's anything that I missed on it or I should add, or some tools that you think are actually very useful for art, put them down in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear what you have to say on that. But let's bring this back into my final thoughts on what we should actually use. So now I would hit you guys with, use what's comfortable for you, but honestly, I think you should just start with what you can. If you can get the materials you need to start, get them. However, the problem is, if you aren't committed to art, or you realize it's not for you, then this will have been a great waste of time and money, because art is not a cheap career. So I would recommend starting with the basics I listed in each section, minus that mouse, of course. That I can't recommend to anyone, because starting with the basics, you can build up your skills, and then as you improve, your equipment can reflect that growth. Nothing is a replacement for the amount of time that you put into your craft. So now let's do our final conclusion, looking at the overall pros and cons of traditional and digital art. We're going to start with the pros of traditional art. Overall, I think that you have an access to many materials and they're easily accessible, and I think that's a good way to understand different art media and train your eye on how to actually know what you're looking for. To put it simply, nothing beats that feeling of putting pencil to paper and all that fun it reminds us about creating art. That said, it has its cons, and there are a lot of cons. There are too many materials, making it portable can be a bit cumbersome. Your materials are finite, as they'll run out and you'll need to continually restock your materials. The process needs more materials for it to work to get to your final manga product, and so on and so on. The process just is a little bit longer and harder and can take a bit more time than our counterpart, which is digital. So for digital, it has a lot of pros. It has a nice all-in-one package that you can get. Everything is done inside of your computer program or the computer itself. Your materials are limitless, and your potential is limited to what you can do with the program itself. Also, if you're using a tablet, you have the ability to take it with you, if it's an iPad or any of the other tablets that we discussed. That said, the drawbacks are a bit high. The barrier to entry is super expensive to get into. Then even when you're in the digital sphere, the learning curve to optimize the apps that you want to get good at peak efficiency can take a long time and be very tedious. But once you can get that in order, you will be able to exceed your limits and then some. The limits here are through the roof. So to sum it up, the tools here will not make you any better at art. Dedication and time to your craft will. The amount of time you actually put in is what you'll get out. This is a marathon, y'all, not a race, and we need to be smart about how we go about this. That said, I think you should start with traditional tools and ease your way into digital while taking the time to understand it. And when you decide you want to make the switch, you can find a happy medium. It's up to you. The possibilities are truly endless. But that's a wrap, y'all. I hope you enjoyed this in-depth video on the materials and the differences between traditional and digital methods of creating manga. I think this video was needed in the process because in the next video, I'm gonna go over character designs and how to do them and what they're best used for. But yeah, guys, if you made it to the end of this video, you are amazing, and I wanna give you a big thanks again. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, or hitting that like button, or clicking that bell for notifications when you wanna hear things that I have to say. And don't forget, let me know what you think about Note when you read it. You can read it in the link down below. Okay guys, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace. Bye.